Have you ever wondered why all the international transactions are made in US dollar? If you want to do an international shopping, the price is in US dollar. The price of crude petrol that a country imports is in US dollar. If a country is doing business with another, it is in US dollar. In case of a crisis, the grants from WHO, UNESCO, UNICEF are all in US dollar. Why it is not in euro or yen or lira or rupees or any other currency but the US dollar? Welcome to another episode of FYKI. Today we'll talk how the US dollar became the world's reserve currency. Does the gold standard and the petrodollar have a role in it? To know this, we have to move few decades back, when all the countries in the world were using currency system based on the gold standard. Under the gold standard, the value of the currency of a country was determined in terms of a specified amount of gold. For example, if country A sets the price of 1 ounce of gold at $200 and another country B sets the price for same 1 ounce of gold at €100, then the value of dollar will be 1 by 200 and similarly the value of euro will be 1 by 100 and the exchange rate between the country A and B will be 200:100 or 2:1. That means $2 will be equal to euro 1. The printing of currency notes in any country was more or less in accordance to the amount of gold it possessed, as domestic currencies were freely convertible into gold at that fixed price. As international trades were mostly done in gold, more exports mean more gold inflow, and that means more money circulation in that country, while more imports means more gold outflow, which means less money circulation in that country. As the physical quantity of gold any country possessed was limited, therefore the printing and circulation of its currency was also limited and fairly proportional to its gold reserve. This helped to keep a check on the inflation and the deflation inside the country. Until the early 1900s, England was the most powerful economy in the world, following the gold standard. USA was just behind England in terms of prosperity and development. However, when the World War I broke out in 1914, countries with lesser gold reserves were finding it hard to meet the war expenses. One after another, the European countries started to break away with the gold standard to print more currencies so that they could fund the war expenses. And finally, in 1919, England too had to break away from the gold standard. For the first time in history, England had to borrow money to sustain its economical activities. But as the war ends, the unabrupted printing of more money by the countries resulted in the devaluation of their currency. That means the value of their currency declined rapidly. This appearance of gold as the common anchor resulted in the collapse of the global financial system, and it was also one of the prime reasons for the Great Depression of 1930. A need was felt again among the countries to tie their currency with a guaranteed value of gold. All those nations started coming back to the gold standard again. Soon after the Great Depression, World War II started. And like it did with World War I, the United States jumped into World War II. It became the prime suppliers of arms, weapons and other goods to its allies. Collecting the returns in gold after the war ends, the United States possessed the vast majority of gold in the world. After the war was over, many nations from the winning side of the war proposed several options to create a robust financial system which would help nations having smaller gold reserves to trade without much difficulties. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement took place in USA, where it was decided that the currency of any country in the world will be linked to the US dollar, and in turn only the US dollar will be linked to the gold. All the 44 member countries participating except the Soviet Union signed the agreement to maintain a fixed exchange rate for their currency with the US dollar. The value of gold was fixed as $35 an ounce. The US agreed to supply gold to other countries at this rate in exchange of US dollars held by other countries. Also, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank was also created under this agreement. Although no member country liked this option, but still the US dollar was selected as the world reserve currency. It was because the USA by then had almost 75% of the world gold deposits. Also, by that time, a huge amount of US dollars were circulating outside the US, being held by the allied nations or others. United Nations became the most powerful economy in the world, and other countries, which were rebuilding itself from the war aftermath, and had no other option but to accept it. Surprisingly, the agreement made in Bretton Woods did not last long. Slowly, USA started printing more monies to finance the post-war constructions. Also, large amount of money were being used to fund the Vietnam War. There was a growing concern for the stability of the US dollar among the countries. When the countries holding these dollars went for exchange with gold, the gold reserve of the US started to deplete. Finally, in 1971, the US under President Nixon broke its commitment under the Bretton Woods Agreement to convert US dollar to gold. Dealing gold with the US dollar made the United Nations the hub of global financing. Other nations need to do business by exporting and earn foreign exchange, and the US had to just print more money. Also, the US now could print dollars without having to bother about the domestic inflation or the balance of payment, as two-thirds of their dollars circulating were held outside the US. The United States now could easily invest on military expenditures and also on foreign aid to achieve their political goals. The then Soviet Union was the only nation who was opposing this status being enjoyed by the US dollar, and it was one of the reasons of the Cold War. The next milestone in the history of US dollar dominance was the pricing of Middle East oil in its currency, also known as the petrodollars. In 1974, President Nixon signed a bilateral agreement with Saudi Arabia that its oil will be priced and sold only in US dollar. In return, USA will provide military protection and assistance, technology transfer for better production of oil, and more profit to Saudi Arabia. This later extended to all the countries under OPEC. All these events finally made the US dollar the global reserve currency of the world, with over two-thirds of the global reserve currencies in dollars. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.